I was 12 years old when my parents told me, "Be a man," and left me at a gas station 80 miles from home. I slept behind a dumpster. I never spoke to them again, until last week, when my brother's wedding invitation arrived, with a note from them inside. My name is Isaac, and I'm 30 years old. But some memories don't fade, they grow stronger with time. I don't usually talk much about my childhood. Not because I've forgotten it, but because when I verbalize it, it feels as real as the day it happened. As if I were 12 again, standing in the middle of a gas station parking lot, clutching a chocolate bar I didn't have money to pay for, watching the taillights of my parents' truck disappear into the night. It happened in August, just before school started. We were on one of those forced family trips my mother always insisted on, where my father yelled his frustrations under the guise of wisdom, and every mediocre thought from my older brother, Caleb, was celebrated as a gift. I was the quiet one, the too sensitive, the one who was always in the way. That day, I spilled a soda in the back seat. Caleb, who was 16 and a master at deflecting blame, smiled and said, "He did it on purpose." My father pulled over at the next gas station. "You're not a baby anymore," he barked at me. "You want to act like an adult? Then find your own way home." At first, I thought it was one of his twisted jokes. But then the truck doors slammed shut and they drove away. I ran after them, calling out, but my voice cracked and was lost in the roar of the engines. The gas station attendant looked at me as if I were just another stray dog. That night I slept huddled behind a dumpster, my heart pounding every time a car passed. 80 miles from home, with no money, no phone, no one to call. I didn't cry. I think that part of me froze that night, the part that believed a family was an unbreakable thing. The next morning, I found a payphone and called my teacher at the time, Mrs. Valencia. She was the one who picked me up. I told her my parents must have forgotten me. I could see in her eyes that she didn't believe me, but she didn't push. When I got home, no one showed any surprise. My mother barely looked up from her laptop. "You took your time," she said. Caleb, on the sofa playing video games, muttered, "You should have walked faster." My father didn't even mention it. The next morning, he greeted me at breakfast as if everything were normal. That was the day I stopped trying to belong. I finished school as a ghost in the hallways, eating lunch alone, studying in silence. As soon as I turned 18, I left. I worked 3 jobs to pay for a university in another city, without telling anyone. I changed my number and, for the first time, I felt like I could breathe on my own. I spent the last decade building a life they knew nothing about. I'm a software engineer and I've adopted a rescue dog, Max, a scared little mutt who flinches at loud voices. We understand each other. I thought I would never hear from them again, but last week a letter arrived. No return address, but the handwriting on the envelope, dramatic and ornate, was unmistakably my mother's. I opened it slowly, expecting some threat, but inside was a wedding invitation for Caleb, engraved in gold lettering, and a handwritten note. It said, "Isaac, we know things have been distant, but Caleb is getting married and it would mean a lot to the family if you came. He would like to reconnect. We hope to see you. With love, Mom and Dad." I stared at the note. They wanted to reconnect, as if they hadn't abandoned me at a gas station at 12 without an apology. I squeezed the paper until it crumpled, about to throw it away, but I stopped. I turned the invitation over. An elegant venue, an outdoor ceremony, formal dress code. Even a QR code to RSVP, as if I were just another distant relative. At that moment, an idea began to form in my mind. If they wanted me back in the picture, I would show them how I would fit in. The bride's name was Emily R. Kensington. I vaguely remembered her from school, from a wealthy and respected family. Of course Caleb had married her. He, the older son, with a quarterback smile, idolized by my parents. That same night, I looked for Emily online. Her life was a perfect collection of Instagram photos and inspiring quotes. And in one of her posts, I found the link to her wedding website. There, under the love story section, Caleb had written, "I was always the kind of guy who believed in fate." But nothing prepared me for Emily, her grace, her kindness, the way she looked at me and saw more than the boy I used to be. I read that last sentence several times. And I remembered the boy he used to be. A bully with a halo. The same one who had pushed me into a pond on my 12th birthday and told our parents I had slipped. I wasn't planning on going to the wedding. But that sentence made me change my mind. Caleb was rewriting his story, pretending there was no collateral damage. And now, the same people who had literally abandoned me were calling me family again. I didn't RSVP online. That would have been too easy. Instead, I used a contact to get a high-end formal suit and booked a room at the same luxury hotel mentioned on the website, under a different name. I didn't want them to know I was coming, at least not yet. 2 weeks before the wedding, I sent an email to the RSVP address, Isaac. I look forward to the celebration. Please don't mention my attendance. I'd like to surprise the newlyweds. The message was read, but there was no response. The day before the wedding, the place looked like something out of a movie. I watched the rehearsal dinner from a terrace, wearing sunglasses. No one noticed me. I saw my mother, thinner than I remembered, laughing that shrill laugh that always sounded forced. And my father, with a puffier face, as if life had taken its toll. They were talking to Emily's parents, praising Caleb. Then, Caleb turned around and for the first time in almost 2 decades, our eyes met. His face broke for an instant, a flash of, "What is he doing here?" before he quickly turned away. I knew he hadn't told my parents I was coming. I left before the speeches. The morning of the wedding, I put on the suit and looked at myself in the mirror. The memory of the gas station played in my mind. I took the old photo out of my pocket, folded and faded, me at 12, with a lost look. Mrs. Valencia had sent it to me years later with a note that said, "You survived." I slipped the photo into my inner pocket. At the hotel, the shuttle service took me to the vineyard, full of guests who ignored me. When I arrived, the place had been transformed. I saw my parents in the front row, smiling. At that moment, an elegant, older woman with silver hair approached me. "You must be Isaac," she said. "I'm Evelyn Kensington, Emily's mother." Curiosity shone in her eyes. "Caleb told us you might come. I just wanted to welcome you." My guard immediately went up. "Caleb told you I might come," I replied. She nodded. Yes, he said there was some distance, but he hoped this would be a step toward reconciliation. I could have laughed, but I didn't. So Caleb had told Emily's family, but not mine. Interesting. The reception was where everything began to unravel. The ballroom was spectacular, with chandeliers hanging like frozen waterfalls. My name was not on any seating card. I approached my parents' table. There was an empty chair, with a card that said, "Reserved for family." My mother saw me. "So you came," she said, without getting up. "Apparently," I replied. My father didn't speak. He just leaned back, as if it were a question he didn't want to answer. Then Caleb came over. "Hey, glad you came," he said in a low voice. "It's not thanks to you," I replied. "I thought you'd see the invitation and throw it away, like you always do." The rage boiled inside me. "I came because I wanted to see if you remembered," I said softly. He looked at me, with his tan and his confidence, a man who had never paid for anything in blood or silence. "Remember what?" I reached into my pocket and took out the photo. He swallowed hard. "That was years ago. I thought you'd gotten over it." The word, "gotten over it," hit me. "I'm not here to ruin your wedding," I said. "You can relax. But I'll stay for the speeches." The lights dimmed as the hall filled with the buzz of the guests. Caleb and Emily sat at the main table. Emily's father spoke first, a polished speech full of warmth. Then Caleb's best man, who kept a light tone. Finally, the master of ceremonies took the microphone and announced me. And to finish, a special toast from Isaac, the groom's younger brother. The room fell silent. My parents froze. Caleb's jaw tightened. Emily blinked in confusion. I walked slowly to the microphone. "Good evening," I said in a firm voice. "I'm Isaac, Caleb's younger brother." Several heads turned. People whispered. "I wasn't sure if I would come tonight," I continued. "In fact, I've spent the last few weeks thinking about it. You see, I haven't spoken to my family in 18 years. I received a wedding invitation out of the blue, with a note that said it would mean a lot to the family if I came." I paused. "This is a photo of me at 12. I held up the photo. It was taken the morning after my parents left me at a gas station, 80 miles from home. I had spilled a soda. Instead of scolding me, they left me. They told me to act like an adult and fend for myself. The audience shuddered. The murmurs became more audible. They never came back for me. I slept behind a dumpster. The only reason I got home was because a teacher picked me up the next day. They never apologized. Not my parents, not Caleb. I looked at my parents. My father's face was pale. My mother's mouth was slightly open. "I'm not here to ruin anyone's night," I said. "Emily, you seem lovely. Your family has been kind. And Caleb, you've always known how to put on a good face." His expression cracked for a moment. "But I think weddings are about honesty. And it wouldn't be honest for me to be here pretending we were ever close. Or that I grew up in a house where family meant protection, not survival. I was invited to be an accessory in a perfect picture. A brother to fill an empty space. So consider this my wedding gift. I placed the photo on the main table, right in front of Caleb. A reminder of what family looks like when you turn your back on it. I turned and walked away from the microphone. There was no applause, just a stunned silence. As I walked past my parents' table, I heard my mother whisper my name. My father tried to get up, but I kept going. I stepped out into the cool night air. I wasn't angry. I was free. The ride back to the hotel was silent. The hum of the tires and my thoughts kept me company. I didn't go to my room. I walked the vineyard paths, unraveling the tension in my chest. I had lived as a ghost in my own family, but that night I reminded them that I was flesh, bone, and memory. In my room, I had a voicemail from an unknown number. Isaac, it's Emily. I wish someone had told me. I just want you to know I'm not angry. You deserved it. I'm sorry. That was the first apology I'd received in 18 years. And it didn't come from my family. I left the next morning. A few weeks later, my cousin Hannah contacted me on LinkedIn, apologizing for never having asked what happened. I also received a message from Mrs. Valencia. I always wondered what became of you. I am so proud. That night, I cried for the first time in years, but not from pain, but from liberation. The kind of crying you feel after holding your breath for a long time and finally, at last, exhaling. My story, published in a journalist's article, was titled Left Behind, a man's silent escape from a family that tried to erase him. It went viral. The journalist, Claire Rousseau, had verified every detail. She interviewed Mrs. Valencia and included the photo. She also quoted my speech and Emily's response. It wasn't a scandal, it was the truth, cleanly told. And that's why it resonated so much. The comments overflowed with similar stories. I received dozens of private messages. The best came from Mark, Emily's brother. I always thought Caleb was fake. Now I know why. My parents are furious. Not with you but with him. They feel like they were lied to. 2 days later, another email arrived from Emily. Isaac, I read the article. I showed it to Caleb. He exploded. He said you ambushed him and made everything sound worse, but you didn't. And that made me realize you're telling the truth. He asked me to choose. I chose. The annulment is in progress. Thank you for not letting me walk into that lie with my eyes blindfolded. I didn't celebrate. I just sat in silence, remembering the 12-year-old boy who thought, they have to come back. And now, almost 2 decades later, the family that had abandoned me finally knew what it meant. To lose control of their own story. 3 days after the article came out, my parents called. My mother, her voice shaking with fury, screamed that I had ruined Caleb's life. My father, in a strangely defeated voice, called me soft and congratulated me on having destroyed my family. But I didn't destroy it. They destroyed the version of me that still needed them. I got up, opened a desk drawer, and took out the photo one last time. I smiled at the boy in the picture. Then I put it away, not to bury the past, but because I had finally finished writing the end. I didn't stop there. The article opened doors for me. I started working with a non-profit for adults who had been abandoned by their families. I began writing a book, The Ghost Son. I didn't write it for revenge. I wrote it for the child I was. One day, I received a letter from Mrs. Valencia. She told me she had cut out the article and put it on her classroom wall. That she sometimes talked about my story to students. Being proud of you, sometimes, is remembering someone when others forget. That letter made me cry for real. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. I was no longer a shadow, or the forgotten one. I was here. I had survived. And now I was living.